Let's let's move to the next presentation by C. Mohammed Hassim. The textbook, A Friend or a Foe. I think this is a great question that we are also looking forward to the answer to this question. Is a teacher trainer and supervisor. He worked as a teacher of English in Marrakesh and Taradant. He also worked as an ELT teacher supervisor in Ouarzazate, Tinghir, Zagora, and Taradant for 23 years. He served as president of MATE for 2 mandates, 2006 to 2008 and 2016 to 2018. He also served as a member of the editing board of MATE newsletter and proceedings and as MATE's webmaster for several years. He has been a MATE member since the mid 80s. He has published many articles on ELT, ICT, and teacher development. He's the coordinator or the co-author of the English textbooks Gateway to English 1 and 2, used officially in the first and the second year's baccalaureate, respectively. He's also the co-author of 2 English textbook series, 6 levels each, for primary school, Atlas English, and Score High in English. He has presented in many national and international conferences, including TESOL, Arabia, Egypt 2007, IATEFL, UK 2012, and TESOL, USA in 2016. He has been involved in various national and international educational projects. He's a validated trainer with the British Council for Connecting Classroom and the International School Award, ISA. His main interests as teacher are teacher training, materials development, and using ICT in EFL. He recently, 2020, published a book entitled Teaching Materials, ICT, and Professional Development, a practitioner perspective. See, Mohammed Hassim, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sifemi. I just might want to make sure that all mics are off. Okay, I'll start my presentation by sharing my PowerPoint. Okay, can you hear me well first?
Sure, Si Hassim.
Can you see the PowerPoint presentation?
Yes, Si Hassim.
Okay, thank you very much. It's a great pleasure to be here today with you online and to talk about a very sensitive and thorny and provocative topic as textbooks in Morocco. Textbooks have been a very great interest for me for more than 3 decades. Even since I started teaching in secondary schools, I've been put in many challenges to prepare my own materials where there are no textbooks. And this experience has helped a lot in my future development as materials writer in general. This presentation is going to tackle a few points. As we know that teaching materials and textbooks is a wide topic. We cannot deal with that in 20 minutes, but I'll try to be more focused and just deal with the points that are very interesting and useful for teachers. So these are the points I'm going to deal with. So I'm going to talk about the position of the textbook as a teaching and learning material. And then I'll move to the situation in Morocco and the position of textbooks in our Moroccan context. And then the attitudes that different teachers and different partners take towards the textbook. And then I'll present a sort of reconciliation between attitudes. And this reconciliation is, as the word refers to, it's a positive one. It's an active and creative attitude towards the textbook. In this point, I'll tackle the issue of the teacher as a materials developer, and then the textbook as a framework for teacher-produced materials, and last is the adaptation of textbook materials, whatever the textbook is. And in this presentation, I'm talking from a pedagogical perspective. It's not a commercial perspective. I am part of the writers of those textbooks, but I'm not talking on behalf of any textbook. I'm just talking about textbooks in general with reference to the Moroccan context. I'm not defending any textbook, or I'm not criticizing any textbook. Concerning this topic, it comes with some initiative taken by the Moroccan Association of Teachers of English through the development of some practice textbooks that parallel the official textbook. It's a kind of upgrading the textbooks that have existed in Morocco for more than 12 years or 13 years. Some of them goes up to 17 years if we take middle school textbooks. So May took the initiative in a collaborative way with many teachers contributing to this initiative to show or to give an example of how teachers can be active and productive and provide a quality material that can be used with the official textbook, which is, and we all agree that is outdated. And the position that I take in this presentation, as I said, is a positive reaction. It's not negative. We can criticize. Many people can criticize, but we need to go beyond criticism. Concerning the first point, which is the situation of, or the position of textbook as a teaching material. First of all, we need to agree that the textbook is just one tool among other tools in teaching and learning languages or whatever topic. It's not the only one, but it's central. It's the most important. But there are other materials that can be used together with the textbook, especially in the age of the internet and in the age of the abundance of materials that we can look for and use from the internet. This is a general idea. The textbook is just one tool. The second idea is that the textbook, whatever it is, whether it is Moroccan or not Moroccan, has advantages as well as limitations. Just to give you an example, I will give other reasons why, but there is no ideal textbook. No one can produce an ideal textbook that can be suitable for all teaching and learning situations, and that can respond to all students and to all needs all over the country. Please, can you switch off the mic? I don't know who is using the mic. Okay, the third point is that producing instructional materials is not an easy task. It requires training, experimenting, competencies, and above all, time and effort. There is no shortcut to this. And the production of teaching materials, it is not the responsibility of the teacher alone. Other parties should be involved, like supervisors, like teacher trainers, and even textbook writers. There always should be some collaboration on this in this sense. Throughout history in Morocco, we have been using a lot of textbooks, and this picture shows you how many textbooks have been used in Morocco. Possibly I missed some of them. But in general, following the historical development of textbooks in Morocco, at the beginning it starts with foreign textbooks. the French textbooks, then the American and British ones. And then in the mid-80s, we had the Moroccan textbooks coming into use. And there is a great development in textbooks. And the current textbooks, if you take them and compare them to previous ones, you can see that there is vast development in the production of textbooks in Morocco. Despite the limitations, despite the criticism, despite all what is said about the textbook, you can see that it's an advanced stage in Morocco. And if you can go to Mr. Malouk's article about second-year baccalaureate textbooks, which you can read in his book published by Mate, it is a very interesting article about how the textbooks were produced and the strengths and weaknesses of those textbooks. But in general, his idea is that the textbooks that are produced now are far better than the previous one, and they have certain good and strong points. Okay, if we follow the historical development, we have the first textbooks that come with the National Charter. The first one is 2003, then Common Core 2005, first year back 2006, and second year back 2007. And in each level, we have at least 2 textbooks. And in Common Core and second year baccalaureate, we have 3 textbooks. So these textbooks come with the liberalization and plurality of textbooks that came with the National Charter of Education. But since then, there is no chance, and the textbooks we are using, some of them, as I said, have gone up to 17 years. The recent ones, 2007, it's 13 years. That's too much. However, there are certain positive things in this new development in the production of textbooks through the National Charter. So this attitude or this novelty has given birth to a growing local expertise in textbook writing. So many people were involved in textbook writing. It has created some positive competitiveness. So competitiveness has given a rise to quality. It has opened the possibility for variety in syllabus implementations. You have different textbooks that implement the same syllabus. It has provided teachers with varied teaching materials, so you can use the 2 textbooks interchangeably, though the students may use only one textbook. However, there are some negative sides. The content is outdated, we all agree on that. And also there is a growing tendency of teachers relying on textbooks. When you rely on outdated textbooks, then your methods and techniques will be automatically outdated too. With the use of the same textbook for more than a decade, teachers and students start to look at the textbook with feelings of resentment and boredom. They become familiar with the textbooks, and some of them do not like to use them. And in the absence of adequate teacher training and continuous professional development, materials development and adaptation, there is heavy reliance on textbooks. So as I said at the beginning, materials development is not an easy task. It requires training and guidance, and this is lacking in our Moroccan context. Point 3, attitudes towards the textbooks. There has been different attitudes in general, not only in Morocco. Some of them are in favor of full-fledged detailed textbooks with detailed lesson plans. Some of them do not want a textbook. They just want activities books with varied resources. And some of them are in favor of no textbooks at all, but just resources that are chosen by the teachers. So either the textbook takes a central position, or a marginal position, or a total elimination. And this leads to 3 common attitudes. So adoption, that is, you use the textbook as is, literally, and you follow the activities in the textbook, or you adapt the textbook for different situations. or there is total rejection. In Morocco, we don't have total rejection. We have either adoption or adaptation. And for me, and through what I'm going to talk about later, adaptation is the most appropriate attitudes towards the use of textbooks. Adoption will only, especially in the case of outdated textbook, will only gender monotony and alienation. For reconciliation, I will talk about 3 points: the teacher as a materials developer, and the textbook as a framework for teacher-produced materials, and adaptation of textbook materials. So for the first idea or point, which is the textbook, the teacher as materials developer, it's part of the teacher's job to produce materials for teaching and learning with or without a textbook. So lesson planning is a major task that all teachers do at a daily basis. So lesson planning is, in part of it, a kind of materials development. So we cannot say that this is not the business of the teacher. It's part of his or her job. You cannot say, I will not do it. Also, part of the teacher's job is to plan the teaching learning process and build up short, medium, and long-term objectives. There is a textbook, there is a syllabus, but it's the teacher who are using all these materials, and it's the teacher who should set the objectives for his students, because he's the only one who knows his or her students better. The teacher should use the textbook actively and productively. We should not be using the textbook literally and then we blame the textbooks for that. The textbook is a simple tool, and it's the teacher who makes it useful in the classroom. Also, the teacher should use the textbook in addition to other materials that he or she should try to integrate within the classroom activities. Also, the teacher should make sure that that he or she fulfills the objectives of the syllabus. We have to make a clear distinction between the syllabus and the textbook. The textbook is not the syllabus. The textbook is just a manifestation of the syllabus. And what makes the teacher accountable is the fulfillment of the objectives of the syllabus. For the textbook, you can use it in different ways. You can omit, you can adapt, you can replace, you can do whatever you like. But what is important is to convey the objectives of the syllabus. And another evidence of this is that we have many textbooks, but we have only one syllabus. So all those textbooks stem from one syllabus, which is the most important. This is why the teachers, when they are planning their teaching and their students' learning, should take into consideration the syllabus in the first place, and then comes the textbook. The textbook as a framework for teacher-produced materials. This is an idea that is put forward by Hutchinson, who says that our purpose, in other words, may be to enable the individual to develop his or her talent as fully as possible, but the means of achieving this is to provide the secure framework within which learners and teachers can make informed choices. So the textbook provides us a reference that we can check, or that we can use to check our progression, our teaching, our objectives. It's a familiar map, if you might say. It's a map that guides us in our teaching and learning. A teacher cannot produce a textbook in 1 year or 2 years or even in many years, because it's a very sophisticated procedure. But a teacher can use the same textbook in a different way. So you can take the textbook, but you can change whatever you want to change within that framework to make sure that you are not losing track. So the idea of the textbook as a framework helps the teacher to feel secure that he or she is working within a familiar area and that he is or she is unlikely to go astray. The teacher can introduce the necessary changes within an officially proposed material. And he or she can achieve some professional development through guided and organized work instead of relying on personal and tentative ventures. With the lack of professional development in teaching materials, the textbook can give you an idea how materials can be developed. What is good about the Moroccan textbooks is that they are flexible and they are well organized and they give you a clear development and progression of the syllabus. So you have different components. You have vocabulary, you have grammar, you have functions, you have reading, listening, and all the components of language in one unit. So with each component, you can make changes that you want. You can replace, you can omit, you can bring other materials, you can use different textbooks to convey the same syllabus content. So this flexibility is very important with the Moroccan textbooks. The textbooks help teachers to see one way of making concrete the content and objectives embodied in the syllabus, and they can judge their progression as well as the content of the lessons according to an agreed on reference body. With this idea framework in mind, the teacher has now, among other things to do, it's not only teaching from a textbook. There are other things related to using material in the classroom. The teacher has, among other things, to cater for students' needs and wants. This is part of the role of the teacher. Nobody knows the students' needs and wants better than the teacher. And it's his or her responsibility to match the textbook's materials to his or her students' needs and wants. If he thinks that the text or any material in textbook as being challenging, difficult, it's for him or her to decide how to make it easier and less challenging to the students. The role of the teacher also is to fill the gaps that exist between the textbook and the classroom context. Each context is different. Each classroom is different, even within the same school. And here, we need to fill in the gaps that exist within the textbook and the context, on the one hand, and also between the textbook and the real life on the other. There are many facts in the textbooks that are outdated, and we have to be careful about this. We should not provide facts and ideas and information which has changed, and we give them as they are in the textbook. We have to do some textbook evaluation or materials evaluation before we start using the textbook in the classroom. The teachers need to use materials for specific objectives defined by the teacher himself or herself in the light of her or his teaching situation, the textbook context, the syllabus, and the student's needs. And at the end, the teacher should develop his or his own materials where the textbook does not work well. We don't say that all the textbooks are good or all of it is good, but there are certain weaknesses in textbook, and this is the responsibility of the teacher to remedy for this shortcoming. Now, for full fulfillment of these tasks, the teacher is required to be aware of the real pedagogical role of the textbook and its limitations in order to use it effectively. It's not sufficient to say the textbook is bad. It's bad. So what's next? We have to do something about it. And being aware of the limitations and shortcomings, give the teacher the opportunity to introduce his own or her own materials, or to look for a better material that can replace that material. And here comes the role of teacher-developed activities in catering for students' needs and classroom situations and responding to day-to-day problems. And also, this helps in making the teacher's activities interact with the textbook and opt for a better use of instructional materials. We are dealing with instructional materials in general, and the textbook is just one tool among them. So in order to do this effectively, I quote here Grant 1987, who puts all the actions in one quote. These actions are, first, to assess the students' aims and learning styles, their likes and dislikes, their strengths and their weaknesses. We have to do some diagnostic evaluation of students' likes, dislikes, weaknesses, strengths, and so on, in order to be able to cater for that when using the textbook or using other materials. Decide what methods and materials are most appropriate given the aims of the syllabus, not the aims of the textbook. If the textbook is too challenging, then you have to look for a way of making it within the reach of your students. The last point, the third one, is to decide whether to use, this is number one, to use the material of the textbook as is, or to adapt it, or to replace it, or even to omit it altogether, or to supplement the methods and materials used in the textbook. We are not only talking about the materials, the content, we are talking also about the methodology and the approach that is followed. When we say a textbook is outdated, it's not only the text. Sometimes you bring an up-to-date text from other source, but you follow the same traditional techniques and methods. So we have to think both of the content and the method and the approach. I suggest here for adaptation of the textbook the same actions that were presented by Grant, and I will link them to classroom reality. So when the textbook materials fail or fails certain to be or the material is failing, you not bring it to the classroom, replace it, you bring something else. The textbook material does not suit the student's needs, interests, and level, you replace again, supplement, or make certain changes. When the textbook material does not suit the learner's strategies, not only needs and likes and interests, but also strategies and styles of learning, then replacing or improving the material is also another step. And when the textbook material does not suit the teaching styles and strategies, that is of the teacher, if you feel that the method does not suit your convictions, you can change, you can replace, you can amend, you can improve. When the teacher has a better way than the textbook for achieving a certain object, then you can replace the textbook. When a certain objective is specified by the teacher, but is not catered for by the textbook might not be comprehensive. So you need to produce something, or you need to bring about other materials and implementing it in the classroom. This is the diagram suggested by Grant, and it simplifies the idea of evaluating and matching the textbook material to the classroom. So here we have two elements. You have content, whether the content is suitable or whether the methods and approaches are suitable. So these are two elements. If they are suitable, then you use them. If they are not suitable, you have four actions to take. Either you adapt, or you replace, or you omit, or you add or supplement. So this is a very simple but very effective diagram by Grant. I go back to the idea of adaptation, and I summarize the ideas that I started with. Adaptation is the active and positive attitudes towards textbook materials, and this is a way of reconciliating teachers and students with the update with the textbook materials in a situation where the textbooks are outdated and you have nothing to do. You cannot change the textbook. You cannot replace it, but you can replace the materials. You can change the materials. It's something that is beyond your capacities as a teacher. The decision to change a textbook or a syllabus is a central decision by the Ministry of Education, and sometimes it goes beyond the Ministry of Education itself. It's a governmental decision. So in general, adaptation is a very necessary attitude and action to take when dealing with the textbook for many reasons that I have been talking about earlier, but I will sum them up here. These general ideas are: there is no textbook which is suitable for all teaching and learning situations. There is no textbook which is complete and ideal. And there are no teaching styles and strategies for all teachers. They differ from one teacher to another. Learning strategies also differ from one class to another. Not only from one teacher to another, from one class to another. Students' needs and interests are varied, and no textbook can respond to them all. Even if we bring new textbooks tomorrow, they will not be suitable to all situations. So teaching from the same textbook and following it strictly can lead to boredom and monotony, and sometimes to failure. Teachers need to improve their teaching by being creative and innovative. This is very needed, a very needed attitude, and it's very necessary. We cannot keep ourselves to ready-made materials. We have to venture from time to time to prepare our own materials that suit our situations. The textbook is only one source of teaching materials. Textbooks are static tools. It is always said that once the textbook is published, it is dead. Immediately it is dead. And it's only alive with the teacher's intervention. The teacher needs to put life into the textbook by adaptation, by updating, by adjusting, by replacing, by improving while teaching and learning in a constant way, because the teaching and learning context is constantly changing. A final word. I hope I didn't exceed the time allotted. I'll end or conclude my presentation by two general statements, which might be provocative to some teachers, but it's part of the reality from observed situations. If you think that the textbook is outdated, and this is something we hear recurrently, if you think that the textbook is outdated and you continue to use it literally, then you are the one who is outdated. It's not the textbook. The teacher should be a master of the textbook and not its slave. And this needs a lot of work. It's not easy. It's not given to everyone. It needs collaboration with supervisors, with teacher trainers, with all the parties that are involved in teaching and in English, for example. The teacher alone can only do a part of the task, and collaboration among teachers will make the task easier for everyone. Thank you very much, and I hope that I have covered the main issues in this topic. And if there are any questions that you want to ask, please, you are welcome. Thank you very much.
We'll keep the questions for later, Sir Hassim. Thank you for this very, very interesting presentation. I think you raised a lot of questions, and those questions are going to trigger a lot of questions, and we have already received a number of questions about your presentations and about the ideas, some of the ideas you mentioned there, and I think I could retain that this is a big question itself. The textbook is not the syllabus, and the gap between the textbook and the context of the classroom and bridging that gap is a big question itself. Okay, now because we're running short of time, Sibakas, are you there now?
No, I'm still having some technical problems.
Okay, fine, sure. Okay, so waiting for you. I'll give you 2 minutes or 3 minutes to get prepared. Let me just ask a question. Sir Hassim, I received this question. How would you react to the suggestion that textbooks are only meant for beginners?
I think it's not like that. Textbooks, as I said, is like a map. It's one manifestation of the syllabus. For novice teachers, it's a good way of guiding them into daily teaching and work, and it gives them a certain way of getting familiar with the textbook and the approach and the content. But for an experienced teacher, the textbook can play another role. It's like a map, it's like a guide, where the teacher can follow the progression of the textbook, but make changes, supplementation, and so on. You cannot, even if you are experienced, change or do without the textbook. It's a hard task to prepare all the materials from scratch and bring everything new, but it can be done progressively. That is, each year you make certain changes. Let's say 10% of the material can be your own, and little by little you make wider changes in the textbook. But the textbook is not only a source for the teacher. It's also a source for the student. If you eliminate the textbook, then you are depriving your students from a useful tool that they will resort to from time to time. So the use might be different between novice teachers and experienced teachers, but not all of it. You cannot eliminate the textbook from the teaching learning process.
Mm-hmm. Sibakas, thank you, Hassim. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sibakas, are you ready?
So sorry, Sifemi, I'm still having technical problems.
Okay, fine, sure. Hassim, another question. Yeah. And this is my question. Of course, it's you said that the Moroccan textbooks are well organized, are great, are rich in activities, etc. But still, it's the way to use them is the problem. I personally believe that it's a question of attitude. That is, it's teaching and learning is a question of attitude. To what extent do you agree with this? The question of some people develop a negative attitude towards the teaching material even before using it, or sometimes it's the difficulty of that teaching material or the textbook which makes people reluctant to use it without really knowing that in that difficulty resides a great opportunity for development of the teacher and a great learning of the students. What do you think?
Yeah, I partly agree with you, Sifemi. The textbook is a tool that can be used in the classroom, and the teacher, it's the teacher who uses it. So the attitude matters a lot. But I have two ideas here. Mm-hmm. I have the idea that when you use a textbook literally, for many years, you get bored. Mm-hmm. But if you adapt it, if you supplement it, you make it a dynamic tool. It's not a static tool.
Sure.
And also another thing is which is very important, the lack of training. We do not train our teachers on materials development, which is not given for granted. Mm-hmm. There should be some training. And the example of May producing those textbooks is an example. Mm-hmm. So we have been working as a team. For example, if you take a second year baccalaureate, it's the work of 25 teachers and supervisors. It's not easy. Without that collaboration, we cannot produce that material with that high quality. Mm-hmm. Some of us, within the 25 people who were involved in producing that book, some of us have training on materials production. Mm-hmm. This is why we were a kind of guidance to the others who are new. We have gone through many editing stages of the materials to come up with acceptable and good quality materials. So adaptation is very important because it helps students to get. It helps teachers to get away from monotony. If you use the same textbook, the same activities, you memorize them in some cases, and you get bored yourself before the students. And when you use something automatically and with certain monotony, teachers, students get bored too.
Sure.
So adapting and training teachers are two elements that go together.
Okay, so Hassim, I think you're talking here about automatic reflexes that people develop out of using a textbook for a long time, and especially those people that are page turners, which is it's, you know what I'm talking about. Page turners meaning following exactly what is suggested in the teacher's book, and then it kills. There is no room for the teacher's creativity when you are a page turner.
Because just let me say one thing, Sifami. Sometimes teachers judge one text as being difficult. And they do no reaction. It's difficult. We know that it's difficult because you know your students very well. It's challenging text. But it's your responsibility to change it. You need to bring a text that is at the reach of your students because you know them. But you keep the same text and you complain that it's difficult and you use it again and again. So this is contrary to what we advocate here. If you feel that some material in the textbook is too challenging for your students, change it, improve it, adapt it, omit it and bring something new. There is no harm in that, and nobody will tell you, why are you changing this material? If you have a good reason that relates you to your students in your own classroom context.
So Hassim, somebody is saying that, asking you for what are the ingredients for a successful training of teachers on how to use textbooks, how to supplement them, and how to be the kind of teacher you want them to be through your presentation, in order to be good and excellent at using a textbook, leaving the textbook when time is when time to leave that book is there, and when the context demands that. So what kind of training are you talking about? Because people are raising the question, how can we train these teachers? Sometimes it's just a kind of gathering and you do this and this and this, and there is a lot of the word use of the word should. You should do this and this, but then teachers just leave that training without anything in mind, without something palpable, tangible that they can rely on in order to be the kind of teacher you want them to be.
Well, see, for me, there are at least two ways of doing this. The first one is preparing lessons with the unit in mind. Do not go lesson by lesson. When you go lesson by lesson, the changes that you will make are very limited. But if you take a whole unit, because as I said, our textbooks are very flexible. If it's divided into units, when you say a unit, it's a complete entity with the 4 skills, with structures, with grammar, with vocabulary and everything put into one unit. So it's a complete entity. If you prepare the lessons all together from one unit, it gives you an idea about the whole unit. And you can see the limits, you can see the drawbacks, you can see the places where you will intervene. It will give you enough space in terms of time to do very informed changes. The second one is to work collaboratively. If teachers work collaboratively at the level of materials development, this will be useful, because if I prepare a lesson in a creative way, I can share it with another teacher and I can get some feedback and we can use the material together. The other teacher can pilot or use that material with his or her own classes and can give me feedback. And we can exchange materials. You give me a lesson from Unit 1, I give you a lesson from Unit 2, and in this way, collaboratively, we can get over some of the problems. And when, again, back to the unit, when you see a whole unit, you can do some evaluation.
Okay.
Evaluating the material is one way of doing informed interventions.
Thank you for this advice. Hassim, I got a question from Ustada Asma Lajib. She says that textbooks have been in use for a long time and there is no sign that they will be changed soon. Why would a teacher, she's wondering, why would a teacher adopt a textbook that is already outdated? Um, so what do you think, Sir Hassim? She's saying, why would a teacher adopt a textbook which is completely outdated? Because of the number of years it has been used and because... Okay, so what do you think?
I understand. As I said in my presentation, the idea or the business of a textbook is beyond the capacity of the teacher and the textbook writer. It's a top decision making. It comes from the ministry, even as I said, beyond the ministry. The higher the higher council of education is also involved here. Even the government. The decision of changing syllabi is not an easy task in Morocco. I'm talking about Morocco. It's a central decision. It goes beyond the teacher and beyond the textbook writer. And evidence of this is that all those textbook writers who has done or have done with the textbooks, the official ones, have produced textbooks. Some of them have produced many other textbooks for private sector or for their own business. The textbook writers are continuing their production. They have not stopped. But it's the ministry which stopped. And in this sense, the idea of using the textbook creatively and productively and actively is very necessary. It's not a choice. If we think, as I said, if you think that the textbook is outdated and you continue to use it, then it's you who is outdated. The textbook is outdated. It's a fact. It doesn't need any justification or any evidence. But your attitude need to be justifiable.
Abdullah Yusfi is saying, Abdullah, our president, is saying, using your analogy of friend or foe, I reckon students don't like our paper-based textbooks, and by this token, it is like their foe. By contrast, digital material digital material is motivating. That is, it motivates, tends to motivate students, and therefore it is their friend. Where will the teacher stand?
Yeah. As I said in my presentation, there are certain facts that we cannot change. The textbook is one tool among others. If you rely on the textbook alone, then you are depriving your students from other sources of learning. And even with your textbook, the students are looking for knowledge elsewhere, as you said, in the internet and so on. But in all cases, the textbook is a central tool. It's the baseline. In the absence of the internet, in the absence of technical materials, then the textbook should be used in its optimal way. We have to make the best use of the textbook because it's the most important element that we have at our hands. It's the baseline. It's the minimum you can use in a classroom. But of course, you have to vary the teaching materials. You have to bring other materials, videos, encyclopedias, materials from the internet, native speakers, and there are plenty of materials. There is even abundance of materials. And this is another issue. With the abundance of the materials, how can the teacher adapt himself to this abundance? But still, the textbook has a central use in our Moroccan context, but we have to make good use of it. Without that, it will remain a foe rather than a friend.
Sure. Okay. Sibakas, any news, any good news? Or do you want to take the bus to another station of May2021 Caravan?
No, just one. You allow me 1 minute. I don't want to go to any other station. You allow me 1 minute. I'm trying to solve the problem using other computers.
Sure, fine, good. So
okay. Well,
I'll give the floor to see. Sirhu and Simanawi. Yeah, Simanawi. Go ahead and then Sirhu.
Okay.
Simanawi, turn off your Shabdla. You can start. See, Manawi, your microphone. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Sefemi, for giving me the floor, and I thank also Hassim for the rich presentation. I just have a comment related to Hassim's presentation. According to my modest experience as a supervisor in Zagora and now currently in Taroudant, how teachers deal with the textbook. There are three types of teachers. There are teachers who use there are teachers who rely heavily on the textbook, and some teachers use the textbook partially, and other teachers do not use the textbook at all. So the textbook means different things for different teachers. But observing the classes, I noticed that the problem is not the textbook. It's also the knowledge of the teachers. So some teachers say great things, have great ideas. This is what we call part of the espoused theory. But when it comes to the theory in use, to the implementation of ideas, you find that some classes are really traditional. So the problem, as I said, is not the textbook, but the way teachers reflect and the way teachers see the activities in the textbook. They are not, some of them are not aware of the methodology of the textbook. Sometimes they invent, they think that they invent, they think that they are creative, they think that they are innovative, but in fact they are not, because they miss or they delete the main parts of methodology. To illustrate my point, they want to teach, for example, a lesson of grammar, and they think that they are supplementing the textbook or deleting certain activities, but they destroy the lesson. For example, in a grammar lesson, they skip the contextualized environment, which is a reading passage or the audio document, which give the context of the lesson. And they start with mechanical sentences, with isolated sentences, the contextualized sentences. But in the textbook, we have that rich environment and that contextualized framework, which is, so who is outdated here? It's the so-called innovation of the teacher, because you cannot be creative without being knowledgeable. Creativity comes from being, let's say, knowledgeable and being or mastering what is going on in the ELT literature. Another thing is, still we have teachers who confuse the textbook with the syllabus. Syllabus can be found in the official guidelines, but the textbook is a set of pages which try to reflect some ideas in the syllabus. So I'm not going to name the textbook, a Moroccan textbook. You can find in one unit, a lot of things are repeated, a lot of pages, but if teachers are not aware of reading, examining the unit to the full, they can be very slow in the coverage of the syllabus because they are not aware that things should be deleted and also things are repeated. So it's as if we say we have unnecessary sections. Another thing that I would like to mention, Hassim talked about the teacher as a materials developer, and he mentioned lesson planning. Lesson planning, as I said, means different things to different people, to different teachers. Some teachers use mental plans, some teachers use written plans, some teachers do not plan at all. They do not believe that a lesson plan is part of materials development, is part of being a document, a working document. So a lesson plan will help us to develop professionally. We refer to it when we want to change things, when we want to improve our teaching practices.
Go ahead.
Just as a concluding point, Hassim showed us a lot of previous textbooks, and based on Mr. Malouk's comment, there is a kind of development when it comes to the current textbooks. But yet, the teaching practices of some teachers in Morocco are still lagging behind. The reason is those teachers are not trained, and sometimes they are not aware of the development of methodology in Morocco, and they still teach using the previous approaches, and they do not recognize that there is a kind of development when it comes to methodology. They are talking about exercises instead of tasks. And exercise is not a task. It is exercise has a behavioristic connotation. A task is purposeful, is meaningful.
Yeah, this is why, Simon, I said we have to take into consideration both the content, that is the information, the activities, and so on, and the methodology.
And methodology, yeah.
Yeah, both of them are very important.